Hi everyone, and welcome to HEART's webinar series. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you with us. First, I just wanted to make a note that you have a toolbar on the right of your screen, and there's a question box area on the toolbox where you can write questions throughout the webinar. So please feel free to ask anything that you want throughout the presentation, and we'll be happy to answer those questions at the end. I also wanted to let you know to make sure that you have a pen and pencil out and ready and 2 scrap pieces of paper. You'll need these for activities that we'll be doing later on in the program. And lastly, when the webinar ends, or if you leave, whenever you leave, please note that a survey should pop up on your screen. And if you can take that survey, it's short, just 6 questions, to provide us feedback on the webinar, that would be greatly appreciated. We have had some technical glitches with the survey in the past, so if you don't receive it, please email me at kim@teachheart.org and I can send you the survey another way. We really love to hear your feedback, and it helps us in preparation for future webinars. And with that, we're very happy to introduce our webinar today, A Holistic Approach to Teaching. So I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Kim Corona, and I've been working as a professional humane educator for 12 years, 8 years of that with HEART, and in that time I've taught comprehensive humane education to K to 12th grade students in school, after school, and summer camp programs, facilitated numerous professional development workshops, and developed comprehensive humane education resources. And I am here today presenting with my colleague Christina Halvershorn, HEART's Indianapolis Program Manager, and I'm very happy to turn it over to her so that she can introduce herself.
Thanks, Kim. Hey, everybody. Like Kim said, my name is Christina, and my background is in teaching. I've been a public school teacher and a humane educator for almost 15 years now. I specialize in social emotional learning and restorative justice. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Kim.
Okay, great. So here's just a quick look at our agenda. First, we'll give you an overview of HEART and the work we do for those of you who are new to our organization. Next, we'll take a look into what humane education is and how we define it. Then we're going to delve into our new educational resource guide, Justice for All, Educating Youth for Social Responsibility. And I have to say, we are really thrilled to have this resource completed and to share it with all of you, because it includes content that we've gathered and practiced over 10 years from our experience in teaching humane education. It is available for free download via our website. And for those of you attending the webinar today, we're providing you with the direct link to the guide via our chat box. So make sure that you copy that link and save it. And when you go to that link, it'll bring you to a page where you just click on an image of the guide or the download button to access it directly. You can also visit our website, teachheart.org. Click on Educators on the top menu bar, and then click on Humane Resource Guides. On that page, you'll see the Justice for All Guide, as well as our Animal Resource Guide. And the Animal Resource Guide can also be accessed for free. All we ask you for that guide is to fill out a short form providing your name, location, and why you're interested in the guide and how you'll use it. And then the next thing that we'll be talking about is, we know that sometimes it can be challenging to bring new content into your learning environment. So we're going to provide some tips for blending humane education into your programs and curriculum, which should make it easier to bring lessons like from this guide into your classroom or learning environment. And we're also going to share some behavioral outcomes that you might observe and probably should expect after bringing humane education to the students with whom you work. And lastly, we're going to end with time for questions, as I mentioned earlier. So HEART is a comprehensive humane education organization, which means we teach compassion and respect for people, non-human animals, and the environment. We have offices in New York, Chicago, Indianapolis, and Portland, Oregon, where we provide direct services for students from K to 12 in traditional and non-traditional learning environments. We also offer educational resources, including resource guides like the guide we're going to talk about today, webinars, and in-person trainings worldwide and virtually. And lastly, we advocate for humane education in the educational and governmental sectors. So I'm going to turn it over to Christina, who's going to discuss humane education basics.
Great. Thank you, Kim. So to get things rolling, we really wanted to just take a couple minutes to talk about some of the basics of humane education. We have a pretty specific frame and definition of humane education, so we thought it made sense to share that before we begin, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So to get things rolling, we wanted to take an opportunity for some engagement. I want everybody participating to think about the word humane. This is also an opportunity to explore using the chat box, so try to find the little space in your menu bar that says chat, and when I say the word humane, I want you to type some of the words that spring to mind. So let's see if we're able to see any of the feedback from any of the participants about the word humane. What do you think of when someone says humane? These could be adjectives or examples. Give you just another couple seconds. All right, so we often hear words like kindness, benevolence. Sometimes it helps us to imagine a person who you really feel embodies the very best of a human being. And that's the way that I like to think of the word humane, someone who encapsulates the very best traits of human beings. So as humane educators, we know that inspiring and preparing learners to embody these traits doesn't need to be separate from their academic lives. We know that we can use education as a method to bring out these characteristics and to practice and refine them through real interactions in the classroom and through experiences that have a direct influence on our community, both locally and globally. HEART's definition of humane education is inspiring compassion and empathy for people, other species, and the planet, while encouraging youth to think about the biggest problems facing our world today and empowering them to discover and implement solutions that create a better world for all.
And I just wanted to mention, I see some of the things that people wrote in, like kindness and compassion that Christina mentioned and caring. And some people put people and values. And I just wanted to acknowledge that as well, because the root word of humane is human, which is people, and it's about people living with our best values. So thank you for those words as well.
So take a minute and read what Zoe Weil, a friend and mentor to HEART and the founder of Institute for Humane Education, proposes as humane education's task. So to us, you can see that humane education is much bigger than a curriculum or a binder. It's an incredibly potent way to positively influence the world around us. So that is the vantage point that we come from. So we thought it was also wise to talk a little bit about what it isn't. So many of us have probably had some less than fruitful dialogue about topics related to social justice, animals, or the environment, probably within the last year even. So humane education keeps conversations rich and respectful by avoiding some of these pitfalls. So one thing that humane education is not is preaching. So whether or not we have deeply held beliefs, humane ed is not about preaching. We're after critical thinking and dialogue with participants, not one-sided or didactic speaking. It's also not right and wrong or black and white thinking. As soon as we carve out these dichotomies, participants often shut down their consideration and thought. So it's important that we're open to a multitude of perspectives in order to actually grow, especially when we delve into challenging subjects. We seek to meet participants where they are without judgment. So teachers, as learners, often have to model that sometimes we don't have all the answers. And that's just an opportunity to learn something new. Often teachers hesitate to dive too deeply into subjects that they don't feel like they're experts in. We see some of the most exciting learning happening in classrooms, though, where teachers are learning about new subjects right along with their students. So we don't have to have all the answers to embrace humane education subjects. And last but not least, humane education is not about shaming. Often we learn about a subject that inspires us to question our own behavior. And often we do make changes in our own lives, but that doesn't mean that we have the right to shame others who've not made similar choices. Shame often does more harm than good in such instances, and it's not a part of humane education. Now, personal reflection, accountability, and responsibility are all useful, but shame doesn't have to be part of that equation. So why is humane education important? Not too long ago, I was doing a presentation for parents at a local school, and halfway through I realized that one of the parents, albeit a young one, was once a student at the school where I taught. And this was a reality check for me in a couple of ways. Number one, I still think of myself as downright youthful, so I was surprised to see how many years had actually passed, but also to be reminded that any useful things she learned were now being imparted to her kids and our community. So our students will be directly influencing our communities as adults before we know it, and they're going to be the ones responsible for their own families and the communities and our planet sooner than we think. And next idea, kids are powerful change makers. This is not hyperbole. Kids have amazing potential to make changes in their own lives and in our communities. Never underestimate how far a bit of knowledge and skill can go.
Christina is so right in making this point. I am always amazed at how eager young people are to create change after a humane education lesson. I've had students learn about an issue one day and come back the very next to tell me that they've started a petition related to that issue, or they shared a video with their parents to talk about the topic they learned and what they can do as a family, or they started writing a letter to Congress to express their thoughts and feelings on a certain policy.
Yeah, you talk to any humane educator, and we all have many, many stories like this because it's so true. And that's one of my very favorite things about humane education is that momentum and energy that kids get from learning these topics. And last but not least, in regards to why is humane education important, and many of the challenges facing our communities, our planet, and all life can't wait. Global climate change, poverty, and widespread suffering are just a few of the issues that need attention now. So why waste the amazing creativity and power of youth by not introducing these subjects young? All right. Sorry, guys, I'm having a little bit of technological problems. All right. So we wanted to introduce you to a way of thinking about humane ed that we find particularly useful. The lessons that we cover show you how to explicitly tie humane education content to learning, but you can take that a step further by making humane education the lens through which all learning happens. So we're going to talk about a few of the elements you can use to tie all content back to humane education. So the first is making connections to people, animals, and the planet. Every choice we make is connected to other humans, the planet, and other species. Making these connections helps students broaden their worldview as well as making learning more real to students. In this way, it acts as a theme that unites all learning. So, for example, something kids commonly learn about are imports and exports. So what if we take that a step further and explore what are the costs to the environment when we ship these goods across the globe? How are animals affected by using what was their habitat for farmland? So you see, the connections exist, it just requires making them explicit. And next, empathy and compassion. Emotional connection to content is not a dirty word. In fact, it's the foundation of real and lasting learning. We are not beings with only brains. Our hearts are also an important part of who we are. So allowing students to feel connections to characters, places, and animals is an important and useful tool to help them learn about a wide range of topics. And critical thinking is questioning the assumptions of ourselves and others. And it helps us question and understand why things are the way they are. This is such a critical component of humane education. So many systems are at play and affect students daily. Learning how to think about these systems and ultimately how to use their own power to positively affect them is extremely potent. And then last but not least, empowerment and personal choice. Without this element, these topics could feel hopeless and frightening. So this element brings back the issue full circle and allows students to understand what they can do to help. So what could this actually look like in your classroom? We advise you to filter content through some of these elements. Am I providing accurate information? So these are a series of questions you can sort of ask yourself. Is the information I'm providing one-sided, or is it well-researched and based in evidence? And then the 3 C's of humane education. How am I layering in opportunities for students to think critically, leverage their curiosity, and be creative in how they learn about and address content? And then how many opportunities have I offered students to witness the natural world and all of its beings that inspire reverence? It might seem hard in a city, but it's possible. It could be as simple as observing life forms of any sort in your area, planting a seed, watching it grow. All of these things can help inspire reverence. And then how do I demonstrate and promote respect for the natural world and all of its beings? And how do I show students that we all have a responsibility to these elements? And last, don't leave out the most important part, children need positive actions and alternatives. So discover ways to address their concerns to ensure that they understand that they are capable and powerful both now and as their future selves. So a lot of these ideas came from Zoe Weil, so we definitely recommend checking out her books and her TED Talks and things.
Christina, I just want to thank you for giving such a great explanation of humane education, what it is, and why it's so important, and giving us some questions to think about how to bring it into the teaching that we do. So you might be thinking as you're listening, yes, I completely get what humane education is and why it's important, but how do I actually bring it into my classroom or whichever type of learning setting that you're used it or involved in? So that's why we developed this educational resource guide in partnership with the Peace and Learn Center, Justice for All, Educating Youth for Responsibility for K-5 educators, because we wanted to provide you with the how. We hope that this guide will be an additional resource that you can add to your educational tool belt to provide you with another way to bring humane education to the youth with whom you work. Our Justice for All guide is divided into 5 themes. The first theme, Everyday Practices for a Kind Classroom, is focused on social-emotional learning and provides a framework for creating a safe, respectful, inclusive classroom. And the other 4 themes are content-based, and they provide activities and lessons related to that particular theme. And together, the content shows how each theme relates to issues facing people, non-human animals, and the planet. Each theme in the guide starts with an introduction page that gives context to what the theme is about and how the activities and lessons within it are all interconnected. So we're going to explore some of the guide content in more depth so that you have a better understanding of what the content really looks like. And in doing so, we're going to engage in some activities with you too.
All right. So this photograph here is here in Indianapolis. This was taken at Peace Learning Center. And an important part of this guide are the activities that address social and emotional learning. So the lessons included, especially the lessons from the first unit called Everyday Practices for a Kind Classroom, are the activities that can provide a core practice for healthy communication, emotional awareness, and the ability to resolve those inevitable conflicts. I advise you to not let the simplicity of those practices fool you. These are powerful activities that can really help classrooms become positive and warm places. Take the time to try and sustain these activities, particularly the community circle and STEP. I specialize in restorative justice, and these are the practices I recommend to schools, including high-needs environments and alternative schools, to get the very best out of students in terms of behavior and ability to reach their very best potential. So these are tried and true, field-tested activities and lessons, and we've seen such powerful impacts when students and teachers take the time to invest in social-emotional learning.
All right, well, thanks for that. And I just can't emphasize what Christina's saying enough about utilizing that first theme to create that great sense of community within your students so that they can really delve into the content-focused themes in respectful ways. Okay, so the first theme that we're going to look at is kindness near and far. And before we get into this, we want to kind of show how hopefully this is really relevant for you. So we want to take this opportunity to hear from some of you. So if you can take a moment and think about what you wish your students knew about kindness, or to think about what concerns you've had related to kindness or the lack of it in your school. And if you're comfortable, share your responses in the question box that you have in your toolbar. So I'm just going to wait a few minutes so we can give everyone some time to think about those questions. What do you want your students to know about kindness? What concerns have you had related to kindness in your school?
So I'm going to add one of the comments is that they've never been shown kindness, so they don't know how to model it. And that's a sad reality that we see in a lot of our schools.
Yeah, so thanks so much for sharing that. Just like Christina said, you know, that's a real concern. And imagine if you have students coming in and that's the reality. And then we want to ask them to sit down in a classroom and just focus on the content of the day. So, it's a starting place that I think we all need to value. So within this theme, fostering kindness within our youth, we think it's really critical to address it at an early age for both their interpersonal and global relationships. And we hope that this theme would address that. I'm sure many of you have had that experience with your students. And as you'll see, there's lessons within this theme that are explicitly related. Looking at appreciation for others and one world for all. Those lessons address our interpersonal and global relationships of kindness, and they really teach students to practice kindness among one another. And then One with Nature and Plastic Planet focuses on living kindly toward the earth by respecting our local and global environment. And Coexist with Our Animal Neighbors, and What Do You See, is centered around our treatment of non-human animals. But in teaching all these seemingly different lessons together within the same framework of kindness, they'll open up students' awareness to what it really means to live kindly. These lessons offer youth multiple pathways for learning about kind behaviors. Consider students who exhibit antisocial behaviors. The lessons related to one's treatment of other species may resonate more with them than the lessons that are related to one's treatment of other people. Or there may be a child who emulates strong pro-social behaviors but does not translate those behaviors when they interact with the natural world. In teaching these lessons together within the same theme, youth will see how all these issues are interrelated and consider what it means to live in a kind way in all their interactions with others and the planet. And the final lesson, Kindness Campaign, is a culminating service lesson for youth to demonstrate everything they learned about living kindly and to put it into action to promote kindness throughout their entire school with all their peers. Within this theme, youth will learn about kind behaviors by practicing kindness through role plays in some of the lessons. In some of the lessons, they'll play games, they'll have storytelling, art projects, small and large group discussions, perspective-taking activities, and writing activities. And so within the entire theme, they'll engage in valuable academic skills as well as develop social emotional skills.
And Kim, if I could jump in, we got one other comment that I thought was really interesting, and it's that I'd like them to realize that kindness is a way of being in the world, and that it's something simple. So I thought that was, or sorry, something basic. And I thought that was really, really useful, and I think you'll find this whole unit really applicable because this is, it is just a way of being, but it's almost like another language, especially if we're interacting with kids who have not had a lot of kindness modeled for them. And so we have so many different ways for kids to understand kindness, and we really carefully define it and articulate it, and like Kim is explaining, role play it, so that through all of that repetition and exposure, it does become something that can become more innate. So it's something very basic to us if we were raised with a ton of kindness, but it's not so basic to kids, and we kind of try to demystify that element through these lessons. So I'm really glad you said that, because I think that this will be a useful unit.
Oh, thanks so much for that, Christina. Yeah, exactly what you said, really trying to show how it can start in simplistic ways in our everyday relationships, and then hopefully taking it to a larger level. And then I just wanted to end with saying, this theme is representative of the way all the content themes throughout the entire guide are developed. So the theme always serves as a framework to show how issues facing people, animals, and the planet are related. And then there's opportunities for youth to develop important academic skills while also engaging in service learning to put the knowledge that they gain from the theme into action. So with having said that, and hopefully you have gained a kind of idea about how the structure of the guide is, we want to focus on one specific lesson so it's a little less abstract. So the lesson from the guide that we're going to start with is what's really happening on the farm. And this is from our Mysteries Uncovered theme. And when you go to the guide, this particular lesson can be found on page 260. And we're going to kind of take you through it and see what you think.
And just to make sure everybody has been able to find, there's an area near where the question box was, and it's called the chat box. And I left a link there for where you can actually download the guide, just to make sure everybody knows where to go for that one.
Oh, great, thanks. And I should also say this Mysteries Uncovered theme is really about hidden forms of exploitation that people, other species, and the planet have experienced, and kind of uncovering those. So that's why it's Mysteries Uncovered. So we're going to kind of uncover what farms are really like. So this lesson actually takes place over 2 days. And on the first day, students think about what they've learned about farm animals when they were younger, such as the images of what a typical farm looks like. And students will be shown pictures of different farm animals, just like the adorable pig shown here. And they'll be asked to share the sound that the animal makes. Right, so I'm sure all of you are thinking in your mind the sound of a pig. So it's just a fun and silly way to get them started and seeing cute pictures of animals and thinking about what they sound like. But then it's explained to the students that much of what we've learned about farm animals' lives is different from the reality. So they watch a short animated film called The Matrix Relaunched. And even though it's animated, this film will show them what most large-scale animal farms are like, or factory farms, what they're like today. But because it's animated, it's not overly graphic, so it's easier for younger students to observe. And they'll have a discussion about the film, and then they'll learn about the passing of the Ag-Gag bills, which are laws that have passed in several states that make it illegal to document what's happening inside of large-scale farms. And in the discussion, the students are going to think about, if we can't document what's happening there, that might be silencing animal agriculture workers who want to talk about their experience, animal activists who want to reveal what's happening, and it takes a voice away from the animals who are living on large-scale farms. So in essence, the lesson is about giving a voice back to those who are feeling consequences based on how large-scale farms operate. So students are going to be divided into 4 teams, and each team will represent one of the following groups: animal agriculture workers, farm animals, local wildlife, or meat, egg, and dairy consumers. And within their team, they'll be given a set of 4 facts. The team will break up into these small 4 groups, and each group will translate their facts to being written in the first person point of view to represent their group and to speak up for them.
That multiple perspectives are considered, and students are encouraged to make their own assessment of what they're learning, all while actually practicing that perspective taking.
Exactly. Great point, Christina. So for example, if the animal agriculture worker team consists of 8 students, those 8 students will break up into 4 pairs, and each pair will receive one of the 4 fact cards that you see on the screen about animal agriculture workers' experiences on large-scale farms. So the first pair would get the information on the topic migrant laborers. The second team would get information about gases from pig factory farms, the third group from meat packing workers, and the fourth from chicken producers. So then the youth are going to rewrite their fact from the point of view of the animal agriculture workers using their Speak Out translation worksheets. And it might seem a little bit complicated to students at first when you explain these directions. So before they get started in their separate teams, we provide them with an example to work on as a whole class. So we're going to work on that example together. So as I mentioned earlier, it might be helpful to have a scrap piece of paper. So if you want to pull that out now and get your pen or pencil ready. Imagine that you are on the farm animal team, and this is your fact. It's written in the third person point of view, and I'm going to give everyone a moment to read their fact. So you guys can all go ahead and read this, guys and women. Okay, so now I want you to take a few moments on your own to consider how you might rephrase these 3 sentences if you were saying this fact from the point of view of a cow. So you can either write them down on your scrap paper or just think about it in your mind. And we'll give you a few minutes to do that. So just imagine if you were a cow, how you might say this fact differently. All right, so hopefully you had some time to think about it. If you didn't get to finish, that's okay. I'm going to share with you our suggested translation, and of course there's many ways that this could be rewritten from a cow's point of view. So we wrote, the big metal shed where I live doesn't have any grass for me to graze on when I'm hungry. Grass and hay are my favorite foods and they keep me healthy. The workers feed me corn instead. It may be cheaper for the farm owners, but it hurts my stomach. I'm sorry to tell you this, but it makes me pass gas all day, and that does not feel good. So this is just a simple example that we gave to the students to think about from the cow's point of view, that if they don't get to go outside, they don't get to eat the food that they normally would like to eat, and the food that they're given actually makes them feel sick. And then they would translate these facts on their own. So with whatever time is left, the students would start working on their translation worksheets, and that would conclude the first day of the lesson. On the second day, they will complete their translation, and each team will present their translations together, representing their whole group. After the teams present, students will think about the issues that were brought up and brainstorm possible solutions to make the lives better and or to help animal agriculture workers, farm animals, local wildlife, and meat, egg, and dairy consumers. In the lesson plans, we have a lot of information in the margin of the plan. And in this particular lesson, we have notes and suggestions for solutions about how to improve the lives of each group. So if it's needed to help the students get started or to think of ideas, or to add ideas to what they already brainstormed. So there's already some ideas for solutions, but you really want to encourage the kids to come up with as many solutions as they can. So I just kind of want to break down this lesson. Within this lesson, all the facts that we provide are sourced, so it shows where this information was coming from. And students can check that, and they can see if they find other information that confirms it or gives a different point of view. The translations provide an opportunity to think critically about the issue and what those facts really mean to the individuals who are experiencing this situation. It's also an opportunity to build respect, reverence, and empathy for others by seeing it from someone else's point of view. And it ends with an opportunity to think about solutions on both a personal and systemic level. So this lesson really showcases all 4 elements of humane education that Christina described earlier.
Absolutely. And if I could add how powerful this sort of activity is for children who might be a bit guarded or who might have challenging behaviors or circumstances happening in their lives. So activities like these are allowing that student to expand their ability to empathize in a way that feels safe for them. So many kids who struggle to connect with their peers, they really shine when they study and think about the perspectives of animals. I can't tell you how many students I've had who struggled so much with their peers, but could really learn and develop some social emotional learning skills when presented through the context of animals.
Yeah, and I also wanted to add to what Christina is saying, and you know, some people want to shy away a little bit from teaching about farm animals, and it's important to do it, just like Christina said, to help empathize in a safe way. And I've also found of all the topics that I've taught through the years, youth often become the most engaged and interested in the lessons about farm animals. Young people have a natural affinity for animals. We don't really often learn about the reality that farm animals live in and our current large-scale food system. Our food system is something that's really relevant to our everyday lives, and they're really interested in knowing about what's happening and thinking about ways that they can take action to help everyone who's affected by large-scale farming, especially the animals, and that's definitely been my experience. So the next lesson that we're going to look into is from the empathy connection theme. So the lesson that we're going to look at is called Someone Else's Shoes. And youth will work in small groups in this lesson, and each group will be provided an empathy card, which includes a fictional story based on real people's experiences, such as the empathy card that you see here about Bayani, a sugar plantation laborer. Students are asked to read the story, engage in a role player simulation activity related to the story, and put themselves in the shoes of the story's character, and then answer questions related to the story. The questions challenge students to think about what they learned from the story, how they're connected to the person, and to consider ways that they could make the person's life better. Then each group will share what they learned with the class. So we're going to share one of the stories from the lesson with you now and challenge you to do the simulation activity. So again, make sure you have your other scrap piece of paper ready. So to start, your empathy card is someone with a learning disability. And I'm going to read the story from this card to you. Your name is Nicole and you are 12 years old. You have dyslexia, which is a condition that can make it difficult to read words, numbers, letters, and symbols. You always feel lost in your thoughts. You're constantly thinking about one thing or another. You're told that it will become easier as you get older and more literate, but that seems like a long way off. You feel frustrated because the world seems strange and confusing. Everywhere you look, there's words, books, computers, and signs all day, every day. It would be easier if all the letters always looked the same. You're using techniques to manage your condition, but with all the different fonts and sizes, the letters look different all the time, and it's difficult to make sense of them. You often feel insecure and have low self-esteem. You're becoming more introverted and keeping to yourself. School is very challenging for you, not because you're not smart, but because the way you see words makes it difficult to read and write. Almost everything in school depends on reading and writing. It's also stressful. If you can't read or write, it can make it difficult to learn anything else. Being dyslexic makes it very hard to feel comfortable around others. You don't feel like you fit in, and you avoid people because you don't want them to know that you have difficulty reading and writing. It seems like everyone else can do it so easily when you struggle so much with it. You worry about what you will be able to do for a career when you finish school. So I want you to all take a moment and think about what we just read. And now I'm going to ask you to take out that piece of paper and the scrap pencil, and we're going to give you 2 minutes to copy down the text on the next slide using the hand opposite from the one you usually write with. And while you're doing that, Christina will play the role of a teacher to simulate what many classrooms or learning environments sound like when we ask you to complete tasks. So make sure you're ready. You have your pencil in the opposite hand that you normally write with. And we're going to give you 2 minutes to copy what you see on the screen on your sheet of paper.
Jared, do you seriously not have a pencil again? Come on. Well, no. Go out in the hall. We'll talk about that in a second. Miss Smith, is your computer working? I can't get my attendance to catch. I know. Ruby, face forward. No, you may not go to the bathroom. We're going to go in about 3 minutes. Simon, will you run to the restroom and make sure that nobody's in there? Miss Smith, I'm sorry to bother you again. I cannot get attendance to work. Can you send tech to come to my room to fix the computer? No talking. Jared. Shh. Please don't copy off of his paper. Stop that. Come on, guys, hurry up. We need to get this done before our restroom break. Does anybody have a library book they forgot to turn in?
Okay, and that was 2 minutes. So if everyone can put your pencils or pens down. All right, Christina, thank you for playing the role of the teacher.
Anytime.
So I want to ask if anyone will feel comfortable writing in the box to feel free to do so now about how it felt, how that activity felt to you. How was that experience?
It was confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, confusing. Very good. And I did this activity in preparation, and I felt frustrated. I felt like I didn't even want to finish. I was like, I kept forcing myself to keep going, but it was so overwhelming. I almost just wanted to stop doing the activity. This activity loosely simulates what it might feel like to have problems recognizing words and letters. And as I'm sure that you all experienced, it demonstrated how complicated reading and writing can be when the words look unfamiliar. The time limit is difficult, the handwriting, the spelling, the frustration, just a few elements of this simulation, and it's showing what it might feel like to have dyslexia and trying to write something in a overstimulated environment.
I love activities like this because they illuminate what's often unspoken. Kids are so naturally curious about differences, about struggles, and about the realities of life for others. So this illuminates that respectfully by paving the way for more genuine understanding and connection with others who they otherwise might feel, who otherwise might be misunderstood, or they might even make fun of.
Yeah, so we really hope that this entire lesson helps to build empathy, whether it's, the story of a child with dyslexia or a child laborer, to really see things from their point of view. And we suggest following up this lesson with another lesson in the empathy connection theme called A Day in the Life. In this lesson, it puts in someone else's shoes, it puts youth in the place of another person, and it asks them to put themselves, and in A Day in the Life, we ask them to put themselves in the paws of an animal. And they read stories about an animal's life, and then they have to write a letter back to their parents about what their life is like. And the text includes stories about animal companions, wildlife, and farm animals. And some of the stories will show the animals living a really loving, happy, comfortable life. And in some of the stories, the animals are living in really uncomfortable, painful situations where sometimes they're suffering. And so the students can kind of compare healthy, loving environments for animals to uncomfortable, painful environments for them as well. And again, just like in the kindness near and far theme, they're seemingly different lessons, but they ultimately all relate to you thinking about what it means to embrace empathy and what life looks like when we embrace empathy and when we don't, whoever that someone is. So we know as educators, you have a lot of expectations to meet. So you might be thinking, well, I'd love to bring these lessons into my classroom, but there's so many components that I have. So we've added components to the guide to hopefully make it easier for you to integrate this content into the learning environments where you teach. And additionally, and more importantly, we hope that these components really enhance the lessons and the learning experience the students will receive from them. So each activity and lesson in the guide is aligned to English language arts literacy standards. And throughout the guide, there'll be lessons that are aligned to the language standards, reading for informational text, literature text, writing, and speaking and listening standards. You can see from the previous lessons, the students had an opportunity to practice and improve their reading for informational text, literature, writing, and speaking skills. Some of the lessons in the guide also address next generation science standards, which we hope will be really helpful to educators since these are fairly new standards, and I know a lot of educators are looking for content aligned to NGSS. Some of the lessons are also aligned to International Society for Technology standards, which we thought was really important as the expectations for educators to include technology in their classroom and learning environments is increasing. And because we're living in a world where technology is becoming an increasingly larger integral part of our lives, and it's imperative for the next generation to be familiar and comfortable with utilizing technology. You can easily identify which standards each lesson is aligned to by looking at the margin of the lesson. And additionally, if you're looking for specific standards, we provided charts in the back of the guide, such as the one you see here, that shows all the standards that are in it and which lessons address them. So you can go to the standards you need, look across, and find out which lesson addresses that. If you're someone who's less familiar with standards, so if you're looking on the chart and you see SL42 and you're not exactly sure what that means or what standard that is, after the charts we have an index that shows what all that shorthand stands for, and we write the entire standard out for you as a reference. So hopefully this will make it easier for you to meet the standards you have to meet anyway while bringing Humane Ed into your classroom. And almost every lesson also provides suggested extension activities so that students can learn more about the issue in depth and practice additional skills. As you can see here, it shows our extension activities cover a range of additional skills. Some of them align to STEM connections, technology integration, research projects, role-playing, art, etc. So we tried to build a lot of additional activities into that. That'll help you to go deeper. And these extension activities also provide an opportunity for some lessons that might seem a little more single-focused to add that interconnection component to it to really make it comprehensive Humane Ed. So for example, one of our lessons in Mysteries Uncovered is called It's Raining Cats and Dogs, and it's about animal homelessness, and the extension activity asks students to do research about people who are homeless who have animals and to consider the challenges that they might face and the possible solutions to help both the person and their animal. For example, developing shelters that take in people and their dog or their cat, or whichever animal they're living with. Another example is a lesson, One World for All, in our Kindness Near Arm theme, and it discusses the needs of people and human rights. And in the extension activity, students are challenged to create a Venn diagram comparing the needs of people to the needs of animal companions, and to have a discussion comparing how, while people are guaranteed certain inalienable rights, are there certain protections that should be guaranteed to animals, and why or why not? So some educators may become a bit overwhelmed by the breadth of topics covered in the Justice for All guide and are thinking, I can't be an expert on all these topics. How can I teach them? Don't worry, no one can be an expert on all these topics, and you don't have to be. We've provided suggested resources related to each lesson so you can easily gain additional background information on the lesson before teaching it. And we hope that these resources will help you to feel more confident in teaching the topic and provide you, just to make you feel more confident. But as Christina mentioned, we also want to emphasize that you can learn this content with your students together, that you don't have to know it all before you start providing the information and going through the lessons and the activities. You can learn it together. Additionally, while some of these resources are definitely more appropriate for adults and just for you to get background information, they can also, some of them can also be a source of information for your students to do additional research related to the extension activity or the topic in general. Just make sure you review all those resources in advance so that you pick out the ones that are age appropriate for your students. And within some of the extension projects, we provide sites that can help you put together trusted age-appropriate links that your students can go to do research. So some of these links you can provide in those sites, and it'll help set those sites up for you.
All right, thank you, Kim. As you can probably tell, we did everything we could think of to make bringing humane education into your classroom possible and easy. But because we work with teachers all the time, and because I was one, we're pretty familiar with those little things that might keep us from fully embracing humane education. So our very last section consists of some tips, and we want to talk about some of these things. So we encourage you not to be afraid of controversial subjects. You might see the content of this guide and think to yourself, my classroom seems dramatic enough as it is. I don't think I should introduce any more controversy. And we have a few ideas on that. Sometimes kids who get stuck in interpersonal drama are bored. Why not give them real-life compelling subjects to consider? These topics are fascinating because students immediately see the content is relevant to them and to the real world. Also, it's really important to teach students that it's okay to disagree and to model and practice before the content is covered how to disagree appropriately. So we have some great resources in the guide itself, and I'll share some sentence starters in a couple of slides. Also, if your students get really fired up, turn it into a writing activity. Let them write it out, either as persuasive writing, letters to stakeholders, or even letters to classmates. And we really encourage you to ensure that you're delivering facts and you're not being dogmatic. If parents are concerned, you can easily explain and demonstrate your content and allay any fears about their children being told what to think or do. I've been teaching humane education for over a decade, and I have yet to receive a complaint from a parent, administrator, or student. And I think that that's because I really stick to this notion of letting kids decide for themselves their own opinions. So don't be afraid to say, I'm not sure, let's research that together. What could be more exciting than learning something that's even new to the teacher? Kids love that. And then last, I wanted to mention a tendency that educators have to either go headfirst into subjects that they deeply care about or to avoid them altogether. I think being able to acknowledge and separate your own view on a subject is important, but also to be comfortable talking to kids when they do approach you about a particular topic. So for example, if I'm teaching a unit on climate change, food choice, CO2 emissions, and animal agriculture, that's all covered. We can go into depth about those topics, and students are very open to those. Students can ask me my thoughts or reactions, and I can give those freely, but I make it clear that I'm coming from a non-judgmental place. But I will push in terms of critical thinking and acknowledgement of facts. So it becomes an open and positive back and forth, but it isn't ever about me or my prescription of what a student should or shouldn't do. If, however, I lectured for 45 minutes about my own diet and why I eat the way I do, or why they should feel guilty about the kind of car they drive, or any number of other things, it wouldn't have been so smooth. So you can see that it's a balance, but it's something that we all absolutely can do. So how to handle students who disagree with one another. I want to refer you back to using STEP. So STEP is on page 17 of the guide, and it's a conflict resolution model, and it stands for, each letter stands for an acronym, and we have a clear explanation of all of the different elements of that process. It's a super useful process. I've used it with kids as young as pre-K, and I also use it with adults. So it's a really flexible tool, and it's useful to make sure that they know how to talk it out and provide them with this tool before they are in conflict. So this is something that we use all of the time at Peace Learning Center, and it's a really useful way to teach kids that it's okay to disagree and for them to see it modeled in a healthy way. So we also want them to understand, I'm going to give you some sentence starters here, so that people can understand how to have a constructive dialogue. So we want to really encourage a constructive dialogue and encourage people to know, students to know, that you can disagree without being disagreeable. So let's see. There we go. If we can go back to the disagree. Oh, sorry. Now we've got our steps. So you can see the step diagram there. Please, refer to that. Use it. It's fairly self-explanatory once you get into it, and they're all pretty second nature. And then the disagree. Sorry, Kim, I'm bouncing all over the place. The disagreeing without being disagreeable, super straightforward. These are just some sentence starters to help students become familiar with disagreeing in a positive and productive way. So it is possible to disagree without being disagreeable despite what we see in the media as of late. So this is something really important for us to show kids how to do because they really are not seeing a lot of healthy role modeling of disagreeing without being disagreeable. And let's talk about what to expect. So you begin using these lessons, you're infusing humane education left and right, and what can you expect? So my main advice here is to be flexible and never underestimate your students. A classroom that's used to a constructivist or a project-based approach is no stranger to the need to adjust curricula to the interest and passion of your students, but we experience that frequently as humane educators. You're also going to expect, you can expect kids to see real-life application of what they're learning everywhere. So anticipate hearing kids saying things like, how can we be sure that our school uniforms weren't made in sweatshops? Or can I turn off the lights when we go to art? Or are the green beans in school lunch local or organic? How can we care for the pollinators on school grounds? These are the kind of questions that can show you that you've opened the floodgates for young solutionaries and have successfully implemented humane education. They can also be the beginning of really exciting and truly impactful, powerful projects and lessons.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to what Christina said, because it's so true that it can be so powerful, and you'll start to see your students thinking in new ways and asking new questions. And you know, we were only able to highlight a little content in this webinar of what's in there and what's going to be covered and what's going to get your students really passionate. So I just wanted to make mention that, you know, we were only able to highlight some of the themes, and we didn't really get to cover the superhero theme. So I didn't want that theme to go unnoticed or undervalued. That theme in particular focuses on how we can all be heroes to help people, non-human animals on the planet. And it relates to what Christina said, because when the kids are asking those questions, they're trying to think about in their own ways how they can be a hero and start making change. And it's the superheroes theme is really empowering for youth and great to follow up the content with, because it starts making them think about how they can solve problems in the world. So I just hope that you see all the lessons in the guide besides the ones that we highlighted. It's a really rich compilation of engaging and, as Christina said before, tried and true lessons that will open up your students' hearts and minds.
Absolutely. So we're so excited to turn these lessons loose and for you to harness the power of humane education.
This project has really been a labor of love, and we strive to take everything that we've learned through the years, as I mentioned earlier, in teaching, engaging, comprehensive humane ed, and put it into this guide so that others can utilize the content and reach even more youth. And those of you who are with us today and supporting humane education, you are truly pioneers. So thank you for your belief in the power of humane ed and for joining us. Please stay in touch, and you can contact us via email if you have any questions about you know, resources from this guide or humane education in general. And if you teach any of the content, please let us know and share your stories on what went well and any modifications you made for your own group. You know, we want to hear how you're using this. So stay in touch with us and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest. And if you're not currently on our e-newsletter, please go to teachheart.org, and right on that homepage you can see where to sign up for the e-newsletter. If you sign up, you'll find out about future resources. We have some really exciting resources that will be coming out next year, and when they're available, we'll be announcing it through that newsletter, and we don't want you to miss it.
Yes, definitely stay tuned for those. So with that, we would like to open it up for questions. So if you have any questions or any lingering thoughts, please feel free to chime in now with those.
And I just want to, I see a really thoughtful message from Dee Del Torio. So thank you so much for that kind message. We really appreciate it.
Aw. Likely you might come up with questions as you're using the guide, and Kim and I are very, very familiar with all of the lessons in this guide. So if you, you know, have questions as you're going, please don't hesitate to email us as well. Those emails are right there.
And thank you, Marta. We're very happy that you were able to join us today. So, oh, so someone just said that they joined a bit late. Will the recording be available? Yes, we definitely recorded this, and we will hopefully get it on our website soon. I'm not sure exactly how quickly it will get up, but when it does, we'll post on Facebook that the archive version is available. And you can always check in on our website, teachheart.org, under educators and webinars. We list all the recordings. So yeah, definitely it will be recorded. And anyone who is attending today, if you know someone who would benefit from it, please share the recording with them. And as mentioned earlier, even though we gave a link to the guide on the chat box, it's also going to be it is currently available on our website. So all you have to do is go to Educators Humane Resource Guides and then click on the picture of the guide or the download button, and it'll be available for you for free. So share it widely. All right, well, with that, I do see it is after 5, so I think we'll just end here and say thank you all so much again, everyone who joined us.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night.